Hello, 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 and welcome to My Empty Hands, a podcast about the martial arts. I am Reggie Darden, and today we have a lost episode for you. This episode is with Garrett Scott. He is a very talented martial artist, and he is the first American deaf person to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So it was a pleasure speaking with him, and I was able to kind of piece together this episode, and now finally releasing it, long overdue releasing it. So just a heads up here, this was originally supposed to be my first video episode, but we had some technical difficulties, and the video did not come out, but we had the audio, so this is what I have for you. So once again, please enjoy this interview with Garrett Scott, and we will catch you on the next one.
All right. So welcome to the My Empty Hands podcast. Podcast typically about Kempo, but cover all the martial arts on this show. So I am very excited. This is a night of first, my first video episode, and first time having a wonderful guest here, Mr. Garrett Scott. First deaf person that I'm getting to interview, so I'm really excited to get into your story and share it with my followers. So I'm very, very excited to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time to come in and have a little chat with me. And before we got started, I saw you got to get some rolls in, so hope you had a good time with that. And we're going to get into your story. So first thing that I start with all my guests is how did you get started in the martial arts? When did it all start for you? And we'll just kind of go from there.
So for me, I kind of started out with wrestling, and that was at Texas School for the Deaf. So really before that, I didn't know anything about, any martial arts at all. So it was kind of awkward, at the Texas School for the Deaf. I mean, it's in that Austin area, and so it was just kind of, I don't know, I never really had an experience with bullying before I went there, and in the mainstream school and stuff, I didn't have that issue. And then whenever I went into TSD in 6th grade, I did experience some bullying, and so it was just kind of weird. It was like interesting, because in the deaf world, I figured it'd be a little bit different, but I guess it was kind of that way there where you kind of have some of that bullying, and so it's just kind of awkward and going through that experience. So then whenever I was in 7th grade, I found out that they had wrestling there. So I decided, a good friend of mine there, that was Charles Marley, and so asked me to go, and so I joined in the wrestling team. At first it was really, really awkward, and I just became hooked, and just really fell in love with it and enjoyed every moment until, junior high. And so then, through that process, whenever I was 19, I wasn't able to, stay in the school because I kind of aged out at that point. And so I tried to volunteer as an assistant coach. But after I graduated and everything, I wasn't really able to, stay in with that. All right, so I really kind of, whenever I went into Taekwondo, I didn't really understand everything there. I didn't have an interpreter there in the classes with me or anything like that. And then, so during college, and that was at Southwest SWID. And so I had gotten into wrestling there a little bit, but I did it for 3 years there in college. And in Austin, that's where I really kind of got into ACC and started studying there. after some time, I gained some weight. I kind of ruined my weight. I was doing really well beforehand. And then I was like 152, 160 pound division. And then, I was really good weight at that point. And then throughout college, I gained quite a bit of weight because I was eating too much and not paying attention to my, health and all of that. And so I got really into greasy food at the time for whatever reason, just college. So after that, I noticed that I had gained quite a bit of weight. I was, well over 200 pounds at that point, 260 more like. And so my dad was really concerned with it, and he kind of talked with me, and I said, oh, I'm fine, I'm good, it's all good, it's no big deal, and I just had that kind of punk attitude. And so my dad kind of went through and explained and said, your uncle, my uncle at the time was a dietitian. And he did a really good job, helping people get healthy. And so he was like with football players and different athletes in different industries. And so these people, they eating too much and that sort of thing, it just wasn't a good path for me. And so that's why my dad was really concerned, and he went through and explained it and said, this is really not great, with your weight getting this high. And so I just thought, well, all right, I guess, and so I kind of looked at everything from a different perspective. And so I realized, kind of looking at pictures from back whenever I was in really good shape, that I needed to lose weight. I needed to get myself healthy again. And so I wanted to start exercising, and I went into different areas, and I realized that, I had gone into like weightlifting and stuff that just wasn't my style. It didn't really match me and what I enjoyed doing. And in college at ACC, and at TSD, we had a lot of football, and so we also did wrestling there. And so I saw somebody that I knew from whenever I was a kid, and we started chatting together. And so a wrestling coach rather. And so while we were there talking, I realized that I was like, oh wow, this would be really fun to get back on the mats, and I looked back to wrestling and how much fun that I had, it was awful. It was tough. It was really, really rough to do all of that stuff. And it was crazy for me to even think about it. But at the same time, it was really good to look back on and think about how great it was back then. And I felt like the mats are kind of, I don't know, it was just calling to me, I guess. And so I had shivers kind of go up my arms and up my body. And so I thought, this is where I need to be. And I thought it was really kind of funny because I sat on the bench at one point, and I was sitting in the bleachers area, and I was sitting kind of in the middle, and I saw on the mat, it's a basketball court, of course, where they put the mats down, typically how they do in high school wrestling. And I just kind of sat there and I thought about it. And I thought, I remember during junior high, my junior year in high school, and how the team worked together, and my deaf high school, and how we had beat, and competed against these other teams, and how we ended up winning. And I thought, wow, and I could see, kind of my spirit in my past life standing there, and said to me, you're considered, and I sat there and kind of considered it. And I felt like it was just kind of I could see it back in the time whenever I did originally, and could see myself taking down my opponent. And I thought, wow, I could just almost feel the vibrations from that time whenever I had initially done it, and I could just see it. And I thought, I could see myself doing those things back in the day, and it was like I looked at myself, and there wasn't anybody actually there. It was just kind of in my imagination, you know what I mean? But I thought, that's me. That's who I am. I need to get back to where I was back then. And I started considering it. And so at that point, moving forward, I started volunteering, getting in as a wrestling coach there, and then the assistant coach, and started like just picking it back up again. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed teaching the kids and working with the youth and everything. And then once I became the assistant coach fully, I realized that I was able to help these other deaf kids that were there and work with them. And it was like throughout the season, I was losing some weight, but just not enough. Not enough for what I wanted. And so I was also still a student at ACC, and so I was like working through this, and I just heard it in my heart that I needed to get back on the mats. I don't know where that voice even came from exactly, but I thought, wow, I got to do this. And so I had heard about other people doing the same thing, and I didn't know exactly how to move forward with it. But at that point, I thought, well, maybe it's just me telling myself to do that, get back into wrestling. So I got into judo at that point, and just real basic, kind of stuff. And I thought, well, let's jump in here and see how this looks, And it wasn't something that I was real comfortable with. It wasn't something I knew anything about before jumping into it. But I really enjoyed, learning judo at that time. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. It was like bullheaded type stuff, So it made me laugh, looking at it and thinking myself, as a bull. But at the same time, it was kind of my thing, like from wrestling and then moving into judo, it was just, my mind and body just kind of worked that way. So I knew some of the stuff from wrestling that I was able to implement into judo, but it was also something that I learned a lot while I was there. And the people there, somebody there gave me like a DVD, and so recommended that I watch it, and they said it was Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and I thought, BJJ, what is this, And so I took it home and I watched it, plugged it in the TV and, turned it on. And it was talking about a no-gi tournament. And I was like, oh, okay, that looks a lot like wrestling. They didn't have the leotards in the same way. They had like shorts and, t-shirt and that sort of thing, but it was similar. And I thought, okay, so they're not really pinning the people like they did in wrestling, but they're, grappling in a very similar way. In wrestling, you tap the person, loses whenever you go through and, pin them to the mat. But with this one, you're doing guard, you're, passing the guard, you're getting them out, and you're getting all these different positions and stuff. And I thought, wow, I've never seen this before. And it was fascinating to me. So the next class I went and I gave the DVD back to the person. I said, what is this? This is wild stuff, And he said, oh yeah, that's Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, BJJ. I thought, fascinating, And so that's kind of how my journey started into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, is that I had gone, I forget the name of the guy. This was years ago, but anyway, yeah, he gave me that. It made me start kind of pondering it. And so, I did judo, and it was similar to judo in that you still had the gi, but then whenever you did no-gi, I didn't know exactly what that meant, what it looked like, but that was, I kind of imagined it was similar to wrestling and judo, kind of combined. But, it was just kind of interesting because I really enjoyed doing wrestling. And so then adding to all of that, doing different locks and chokes and different things like that it was really cool to learn all of that stuff. So whenever I had my white belt and I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm rolling around on the mat and just kind of trying to surf around and figure out what I'm doing throughout the whole process. And everybody kept beating me. And I was like, well, crap, why can't I tap anybody else, because I didn't know what to do. And then there was this black belt and said, are you interested in rolling with me? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And so we tried it out. And it was like a joke technique wise, because I mean, it was like he was just chilling on the ground, like, come here, and I'm like struggling and working my butt off and trying to beat him, but he was just like simplistically tapping me over and over and over again. And I just was like, so perplexed. I will never forget that. It was just wild, because I will never forget what he said, which was after the class, he came over to me and he said, and my dad was even there too, the worst part. And, he tried to kind of explain, he tried to interpret what was being said. And he said, I don't understand how you're so good with wrestling. You move really well. But most wrestlers always are really scared of getting on their back, because they get on their back and they're terrified of it. And so for me, that was kind of like my friend. It's like my safe place now. The mat is my safe place. So that's one of the things that I'll never forget him saying to me, because it was like, man, it just really made me ponder. So moving forward from that, it was just like, I don't know, like I learned all these different things. I learned multiple different techniques, and later on in life, I ended up getting my black belt, and I found out that I was the first deaf black belt in the United States, and it was like I was the only one in the entire United States, which just was wild to me. But one of the things that I thought was I thought, oh, well, I'm the first in the world, and that's not true. The first black belt in the world is actually in Brazil, and I have ended up meeting that person, so I take my hat off to him, because I thought that was just fantastic, and I just thought, wow, that's so cool, But who's the first American black belt who's a deaf individual? And found out that was actually me. But that was something that since then I've really been an encouraging person to the other people in the deaf community to show up to class, and I would love to see, the second black belt deaf guy or girl in the United States, and then third and fourth and fifth, moving up from there, because I want people to learn jiu-jitsu. I want people to learn how to defend themselves, and that way they'll be able to really be competitive and get into, this space, as well as being able to stay healthy. And it opens so many different doors. And so that's one of the things that I feel, really grateful for, because, I've been at this for over 15 years at this point. And it's opened up so many doors for me with jiu-jitsu, judo, it's something that I can jump around and have lots of different experiences throughout everything. And I just find that, with jiu-jitsu, there's so many different styles of martial arts as well. There's Kempo, there's, all these different styles. It's fascinating how many people have experienced these different things, and they go through and they, move up in belts, and they feel good about themselves. And it's really a fascinating thing for me. And I feel like that's something that would allow me to. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot here. I apologize. I've had a lot of experiences.
No, that's one of the things that I tell people, or I tell my guests that I love doing about this show, is that martial artists are so passionate about their art that I just let them do the talking, and it makes it easier for me, because I don't have to come up with a whole bunch of questions and kind of keep things going. I love your story.
Yeah.
I love the passion, and it's inspiring to get out there and be a part of such a great thing. Kind of jump. Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's one thing's really kind of funny. During my journey throughout the different martial arts, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo, all of these things, I've never had an interpreter with me, throughout all of these experiences. And so that's something that people ask me, like, how do you, communicate with the people there? And simplistically, I will either watch what's being done and kind of copy those actions or write back and forth. Or a lot of the times it's by feel too. And I'll kind of feel the muscle and I'll know where that is. If I have somebody like tap me in some way, I can remember where they tapped me and how. And so that's something that I learned from my mistakes. I'm a very fast learner. And so that's something that I feel like, communication, that's really important. But if I can watch the movements, then I'm great. I'll be able to pick it up and that won't be an issue for me. So it's kind of fascinating because not having an interpreter in all of my life of going and doing all of these different things, I've gone to competitions, I've gone to, real life training and stuff. And it's something I've never really experienced. And I've got some friends who do some rudimentary signing, but not like formal sign language interpreters. And so that's been a lot of, my journey is that people are just like, oh my God, really? You've never had an interpreter with you in any of your classes? And it's like, yeah, no. And a lot of people will say, oh, I'm sorry you're deaf, but that's something that I've never really felt that way. But it is something that people have asked me numerous times is how do you get along without having an interpreter? How do you get along without having somebody to teach you in your language, that sort of thing? And it's like, I'm visual. I learn the technique and whatever I need to see, I see it. And then I just move forward. And sometimes I'll get some tips, and that's something that I tell people all the time is with jiu-jitsu, the most important part is watching and seeing what's going on. So like a lot of the schools will have a demo portion where they will go through and show the move, explain what's being done, and I'll kind of be watching through the demo portion and kind of I'll mirror what they're doing while they're doing it so that I can kind of make that muscle memory for myself. And then I follow along, and once I get that repetition and that muscle memory there will be occasions whenever I will volunteer to jump in and have them demo on me so that I can feel what it is that's being done, so that I can feel where the points of, pressure are, things like that. So if I can feel that choke going in, I know exactly how that's happening. And so then, obviously I'm going to tap and then move forward from it. And I learn, so initially I will mirror the movements, and then I'll watch it, mirror it, and then I'll feel it. And then with repetition, I've got it down. And I go through and explain that to people, and they just think that's wild. And, because it's like, hey, it's really silly because a lot of the times people with techniques, they don't learn it that way. They'll just like practice it once or twice, and then they'll think they have it down. And it's like, no, that's not so much the case. And so I, a lot of times, kind of make it a game for myself where I'll blindfold myself. I'll close my eyes and just feel it. Because what's happened is that I depend upon my eyes, and I've seen blind grapplers, and they are just phenomenal. How they go through and they can feel those movements and different things, and it's like, wow, it's just wild to see it because they feel everything. And so that's something that I try to do is that I'll close my eyes and just try to feel the technique and trust my body as we're going through and doing the movements. And so even whenever, if I'm blindfolding myself in essence, and, I've realized that I've made a mistake, it's like, okay, I'll tell my partner, okay, go back, let's restart, and then we'll redo everything. And that helps me to kind of get through the process. That helps me to have the muscle memory. That helps me to know the moves better. But like in a guard situation on the ground or something, if I had somebody like cover my eyes up with my jacket or something like that, it would block my vision. And you know what? That's okay. Because I now have those muscle memory. I have that muscle memory there, and I'm ready to use it to get out of whatever situation I might be in. And so that's kind of the most simple way for me to explain it. is that if I kind of think about it in that way, that if I can't see, I still need to be able to defend myself, right? And so that's something that I need to kind of work with. And so that's something that I've learned from the blind community, is that I see that that's something that they've become really good at grappling just from their feel. And so that's kind of a funny thing that I've had happen, is a lot of people are like, man, how do you do that? I'm like, hey, sorry, this is a private thing. I can't tell you, It's like, well, I don't mind sharing, but at the same time, it's a really great way to practice. So, sorry, did you want to add to that question?
That's very well said. That's one of the beauties of the martial arts, is that it's about feeling, especially with judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling. Feeling is going to give you more than having someone tell you how to do a technique, or you just watching a technique. Actually getting out there, feeling the movements, that's going to give you just way more information than any other medium. So I would say that gives you an advantage over others in that we think that we have to be told these things and have to write it down and stuff. It's like, no, get on the mat, get those arms around somebody, get those legs around somebody, and then that's where you really learn it. So perfectly said on that. So just to kind
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what I recommend to people too, is, I'll go to meetings and stuff and I'll tell people, to just go and try it out. Because it's like, there's a lot of people who they'll watch me and they'll go through and like take notes and stuff. And it's like, I'm not really taking notes. I'm just watching the movements for myself and kind of learning the technique visually. And then once I do that mirroring technique that I do, I become more aware of kind of how people are doing it. And so I kind of put that in my mind as like A, B, C, and D. This is how I do this technique. And then once I've kind of gotten those things down, it's like, okay, so then if I have, like, for example, like a set of moves that I want to go through and do this route A, but if that doesn't work out, I have a plan B, I have a plan C, I have a plan D, you know what I mean? So that I can know how to handle things, and I've always got a backup plan ready to go. So, because I never know what's going to happen with the route, with everything. And so it's like, man, I feel like, well, crap, they're choking me out, And so I got to know what to do if they start doing this. And so if I feel a movement that it's like, oh, I think they're about to do this on me, then I know what to do in response. And so that's something that, I try not to like overly panic or anything like that if I start feeling something. It's like, if somebody catches me, it's like, that's frustrating. But at the same time, if I catch somebody else and they're like, man, how did you know I was about to do that? And it's like, hey, it's like fishing. Whenever you go fishing, you can kind of feel it on the rod. You can feel it, whenever the fish kind of bites. And so you can tell if it's a really, really small one or if it's a relatively big one. So you can wait and kind of reel it in a little bit. And then you feel that movement of the fishing pole. And it depending on how that fishing pole feels, what's about to happen. And so for me, whenever I'm waiting for that fish to come in, it's like, man, if I've got a big one on there, perfect. So the same thing, if I've got like 10-footer on me, it's like, I know whenever something's about to happen, I'm going to hook them. Does that make sense? So it's kind of similar concepts between the two. So I can tell, the weight of the fish, and I think, I'm not even gonna go for it, And so that same thing that happens whenever I'm training.
Gotcha. So you do jiu-jitsu, you do judo. Are there any other arts that you train in or have trained in?
Yeah. I mean, I have quite a few experiences, actually, yeah. So mostly I've been in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I love doing no gi. Well, I do both gi and no gi, so nothing wrong with either of those. I feel like they're very similar movements, and same as like wrestling. Obviously, I did wrestling at the beginning of my journey, and I feel like they're very similar where for no gi where you can't grip and that sort of thing. And then I'd gone into judo and started moving up in that, and I haven't practiced that a whole lot recently, but it's something that, with Deaf Olympics coming up, they actually do have a deaf judo tournament with the Deaf Olympics. And so that's something that I would like to do, the Olympics with wrestling, or I think it's in the Dominican Republic coming up soon, but I believe that they have the judo tournament. And so that's something that I've been looking into getting involved in for judo, as well as for taekwondo. They have that, and then they have kenpo, and so that's something that I've been looking at with the deaf world, as well as on the international circuit. And so that's something that I find really fascinating, that I'm really wanting to get into. So it's been there for quite a few years, obviously, and so that's something that I feel like, there are a lot of deaf people who talk about wrestling and that sort of thing, and that's kind of my history. That's where my level is. But, and it's like, yeah, I do want to do wrestling, and I love Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but I also kind of feel like it would be really beneficial to be a part of the USA team. So there is a, heavyweight individual who is hard of hearing, who's gotten really into Taekwondo. And so that's something that I found really fascinating. And so it's something I realized it was only the one who's gotten into it. And so I thought, wow, okay, and so I started looking into the international deaf community, and a lot of those individuals, there's just, one or two. If there's only one woman in the US that's doing this. And so that's something that I'm like, oh, wow, that's something I want to get into, because, judo and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, they're very similar to one another. They're not exactly the same. There's a few rules that are different. But I thought, let me just try out. So I went ahead and tried out last year and joined the judo team. But I don't know if all the other American judo players, competitors.
No problem. Okay.
So I found out that Nina was the only female Olympic competitor in judo. And so there were a few in the other countries, but there, like there's a deaf man, but there's no deaf men actually, and so I was kind of looking at that and trying to figure out. I've seen that there are several deaf individuals who are into wrestling, and I thought, okay, well that's great, but there's only one for judo, and it's this female, Nina. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool, and that's something. Taekwondo also is one that I've looked at and kind of thought about jumping into, because I feel like that's something that, something that I want to get into, and Nina convinced me. We became friends, and she talked me into jumping in and getting into it. And so I thought, okay. So with jiu-jitsu, kind of I was like, I don't want to do that in the obviously it's not in Olympics right now. And so back in 2022, Nina was the champion, and so found out that judo, like 2 years ago or so, I finally made that decision, and it was really hard for me to find the different people to practice with. And so that's something that I did find out, that there is a judo tryout week with another in Dominican Republic with wrestling as well. And so they do grappling as well as judo. And so that was something that I felt like that would be an interesting thing to do as well. So we had two that tried out for it, and I kind of felt like, with wrestling, I thought I knew a few of the people there. I know a few of them well. I've, worked, I've trained with them and that sort of thing. And I thought, let me just go ahead and, I know that they have dreams of glory and that sort of thing. And so I want them to do their best, and I wish them well. But I decided not to try out for that particular team because I was more into jiu-jitsu and judo. And I thought, well, judo, I don't mind trying out for that. I mean, it's, like I said, it's very similar to jiu-jitsu. It's mostly just focused on the stand-up and takedowns. So I went ahead and joined that team. I decided to try out. And I had several people who were like, oh, man, why are you jumping to judo instead of wrestling? And I said, well, there's a lot of you guys. I want to jump into something fresh. So there's a couple deaf people, in there, but there's only like 2 black belts over in judo. And one of them's hard of hearing, that's Nina. And so I thought, well, I'm a brown belt. I've been this for quite some time. I haven't practiced judo for a long time, but at the same time, I'd be able to get back into it. So the situation was kind of crazy, but I went through and practiced judo and my jiu-jitsu, continued practicing judo, or got back into judo, and then, started practicing again. And then, as I moved forward, I kind of learned the technical side of the U.S. judo team. Because there's a coach there. He's a high-level black belt, and he's just, strict as can be. And it's the International Judo Federation and those rules that they follow. And it's strict. And same as IBJJF, like the, International Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Federation. And so that's something that they have a lot of the similar rules. And so deaf people joining, is kind of a new concept for them. So white belts had to be kind of on one side over there. And then there's 10 people that were wanting to join the judo team. And they're like, are you kidding me? And so it's mostly wrestlers and stuff like that who are wanting to do it, but they're super awkward with the sport, still learning everything. And so looking back on it, I thought, judo practitioner from wrestling, I can see some similarities there, but at the same time, looking at myself, it would be something that I would have to kind of get used to and become help them out and kind of use my body and helped them out and taught them how to how to do the movements, the different stretches, things of that nature, and taught them the different techniques and some pretty simple takedowns as well. And they're like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. That makes sense. I learned, and so they learned from me. But I never really taught a team. I was never really a coach before with this kind of thing for judo. And so for competition, I was the only one. I was 81 kilograms, which was 178 pounds. And so, I was the only one in that range. And so it was really pretty easy to get that. And they were asking me how to figure out kilograms from pounds. Because, in the US we use pounds, we don't use kilograms. And so that was something that I went through and kind of taught them how to do the equation for it. And it's not really complex math, but it was something that they were awkward about and they needed to know. And for me, it's kind of common sense. It's not really complicated. So I taught them that as well. And it just kind of, I don't know. It's something that I felt with jiu-jitsu and with wrestling as well, it's something that I learned early on. Everybody makes mistakes, and learning the different takedowns and stuff, and it's something that I've learned is that, okay, you take somebody down, you win. It's all right, cool. So the other individual that I had gone up against was a deaf guy. Bronze, and I had won bronze during that competition because, that's third place. And so that was for the Deaf Olympics, there in Dominican Republic. And that was something I felt like I did a good job, but it was rough. It was a tough, thing for me. So I ended up fighting the individual who won the bronze at the Deaf Olympics and so for judo. And so that was something that I found really, really difficult. And I we kind of bumped heads at one point, and it was like he was like testing me out to see who was really tougher. And, you know, I was like, okay, you know, with all of my wrestling and with all of my jiu-jitsu background, I mean, he butted my head, and I just kind of kept on going and kept on fighting against him. And it was like really lucky that I did have that background, because we were going back and forth continually. And I finally was able to get back at him. And I ended up wrapping his arm up and got a submission off of him, because I was able to wrap up his arm with the gi and got that shoulder lock in place. And he tapped, and so I won it. And so then I became the champion. So, I mean, he allowed me to, you know, kind of, I made a few mistakes, definitely, but at the same time, I was able to, you know, kind of get through that. And so that's something that I've kind of thought to myself, is that I will be able to, I am brown belt, and so I'll be able to do this with judo. And my goal is to get my black belt, you know, but when that's going to happen, I'm not sure. But they did choose me and found that, you know, I was going to be able to jump in there. And I thought, I promised to continue going, and, you know, I'm not going to take any rest. I'm just going to continually keep going and training and getting my training in Monday through Friday, you know, all week long. That's what I'm going to be doing it. So they're my team. I've been in contact with them. We've been working back and forth, giving each other tips. And I feel like that's going to be a really good thing for me. And Carrie Chandler has become a really good friend to me as we've gone through this process of becoming Olympians together. And I feel like that it's, you know, it's like a wizard whenever it comes to judo, because it's like, man, I just feel wore out, and I'm like, man, and he's like, oh no, I'm good. It's like, what? He's so good, you know. And he told me that, you know, with Carrie's uncle is deaf, and, you know, so that was something that with learning sign language and everything, it's been an interesting process for sure. And that was something that I learned, that she had learned all of this different information from her uncle. And so I've been teaching her as well since the, you know, sign language. And I feel like it's a process that I've jumped into, getting ready for all of this, getting ready for the judo competition, getting ready for the Olympics. And I feel like me becoming tougher, they're making me stronger as well through this process, because this tournament is huge, and we've got, you know, just 3 people who get medals. It's not just one, you know, division. I decided I wanted to join. If I wanted to join 2 or 3 divisions, that would be something that I could do. And so that's a huge challenge to go through all of those fights. But at the same time, I like to challenge myself. I want to get into as many divisions as possible. And so with the judo system, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and judo, you know, they really lend each other, or excuse me, for Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm working on different techniques for judo. And so that's something that I've been trying to go through and learn all of the different techniques that I need to know, but it's also quite a bit of work. And so that's been something that I've been working towards for quite some time. I feel like that's something that with jiu-jitsu, you know, it's something that I've learned quite a bit of. And so it's something that I've learned, like with doing all these different judo takedowns and stuff like that, it's taught me how to really improve my jiu-jitsu game. And the same thing goes back to the jiu-jitsu. The more I learn with jiu-jitsu, that improves my judo game, because I'm able to really kind of practice both of these martial arts, and that really helps me in both styles. And so with my age and everything, I've learned that the best I can do is just continue practicing. I can make mistakes and different things like that, but at the same time, I sometimes I got to focus on my defense, guard myself, make sure that I'm good. And then other times I need to work on, my offense and move it into those positions where I can get into better situations. And as I moved up in belt rank, I learned, these different techniques to help me with judo as well as jiu-jitsu. That's something that, these techniques where you're holding somebody down and you're getting control, and then whenever you beat them and you submit them, I feel like that's something that I've become really passionate about. I'll be honest, some of my friends will tease and joke with me, and they're like, "Hey man, I don't understand why some hearing people, they like to, they sweat and they're trying so hard to beat me." And it's like, because I'm a black belt, I guess. And it's like, all right, if you want to try, you're welcome to try. But, we get to rolling and having a good time. And I've become that same kind of guy where I'm just kind of chilling and, letting them try their best to get their technique. And I end up doing a wrist lock on them or whatever simple thing. And they're like, "Oh my God, how did you even do that?" Like, hey, I am a black belt. I'm supposed to know these things, So that's something I've really enjoyed, kind of playing that, smart game. I try not to be prideful or anything like that, but at the same time, it's fun to see them kind of going through and pondering and trying to figure out how to beat me. It's like, hey, you go ahead and try to beat the black belt. That's fine. We'll see how this goes, And I just am defending myself and just kind of playing around with them. And then second later, I've got them subbed, and they're like, how? I don't understand. And it's like, I just see what you're doing. I just play the game, and I'm just goofing around more than anything else and just having fun. But they're like, man, I just want, and they're trying to get a challenge, and it's like, well, enjoy yourself, get a challenge. Here I am. And the majority of the time I just tell them, just do your best and we'll go from there. And so Monday, Wednesday, I'm doing judo, and then Tuesday, Thursday, I'm doing jiu-jitsu. And I'm just trying to train as much as possible. I'm trying to make sure that I'm learning everything that I can. And that's one of the reasons that I prefer training every day. I don't want to do the same training every day, because I feel like that can be problematic. It can, cause a problem. For the USA Deaf team, I feel like they should, a friend of mine there is like real tough and everything, and he's like, "Oh man, you ruined it. You should have come in here and jumped in here with us." And it's like, you got into this judo business, and it's like, well, hey, it's still good, I don't know why they are kind of like tossing me out whenever it's like there's 2 or 3. Or, back in 2022, a group of friends had gone down to the Deaf Olympics for the wrestling portion. And while they were there, one of them got bronze, and then, the other 2 had been there and competed as well. But they went through, and I've known them for many years. I actually helped teach them whenever they were at TSD. And so whenever several of them had so they were really frustrated because they got ousted from the tournament. And so that was something that was very difficult for them, because they got beat. And so they struggled with that a lot. So whenever I had went to them and asked what happened, and they said, well, the reason why, it was like a month was not enough time to train, to get ready for everything. They weren't constantly practicing and getting ready. And I thought, okay, so that means whenever I'm getting ready for the Olympics, I need to really put my heart and soul into it and get to practicing. For the Deaf Olympics, it's going to be, very difficult. With these guys, they had decided to join the wrestling team after only just 1 month before the Deaf Olympics started. I realized was like, that's wild, you know. I mean, and so that's something that I'm learning from, is that I need to put a lot more practice and effort into my training to get ready for it. So I was really lucky that, you know, I've continually practiced and continued to train to get ready for all of these different tournaments and things that I'm going to be getting into. And that's something that I've, you know, doing jiu-jitsu as well as judo and going back and forth, I really know the rules very well for both of those martial arts. And so it's something that I feel like that I've gotten ready for. And that's something that I've really improved quite a bit of. And I've improved the team in general for being a part of it, because I feel like that they've been you know, they know who I am, because, and so I've kind of shed some more light on the team. In the Olympics in Japan, you know, I mean, that's happening soon. And so that's something that I hope to get a medal whenever I go there. And I think I have a good chance. That's something that, you know, I mean, as long as I continually practice and keep myself, you know, fresh for it, you know, and that's, and not just low-key training. I mean, I'm going and I'm working my butt off and I'm trying and I'm sweating each time, you know. Having got my brown belt, yeah, 2 months ago I got my brown belt, and I feel like that's, you know, that's really great. I'm enjoying the training. I'm enjoying working hard. I'm feeling good. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm trying to, you know, get ready, because I feel like that my training's going to be, I mean, it's going to be great. You can't imagine how much driving I'm doing back and forth, going back and forth to doing these different classes over and over. Just every other day, going to one school and then the other school and then the one school and the other school. And it's just, I guarantee that it's not something that I'm just kind of resting on my laurels. I'm making sure that I keep my head in the game and make sure that I'm working hard, getting ready for it, because I want to win. It's become kind of a habit for me to go to practice and go train. Is that something that, you know, it's good for me. It feels good. Even on bad days, if I'm depressed, if I'm happy, it doesn't matter. I step one foot on the mat and everything, all of my cares just go out the window. They're not there anymore. I just, you know, as soon as I get in there and start training, I feel better. It makes me feel good. And it's just, I mean, it's just as natural as breathing at this point. I apologize. I am really giving you a lot of material and not letting you get in any words edgewise.
No, I love it. I wish that we could go all night, but no, I love the story. I can totally relate. I'm currently training 5 different martial arts right now, so I know the struggle of traveling to different classes every day, and my wife looks at me quite crazy when it's like, oh, what art are you doing tonight? And it's like, I can't. It's like what they say, the chips, can't eat just one. I can't just train just one thing. So I can totally relate and
Absolutely,
and
yeah. And that's exactly what I feel, you know, because it's like, it's the same thing as like with the chips. You can't just eat one. You know, I mean, it's the same jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling, kempo, taekwondo, Muay Thai. You know, I'm the same way. I'm involved in all these different martial arts. And it's gotten to where it's like I've become, you know, an MMA competitor, basically, because that's what that is. It's all of those things all mixed into one. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
I mean, mixed martial arts, MMA, that's what it is.
Exactly.
It's not just one thing, one technique, you know, it's all of them.
Exactly. You know, so I think I say this with all of my guests. We'll certainly have to do a part 2, 3, 4, because we certainly can't get to everything in one night.
Absolutely.
So we'll definitely talk about. I mean, we didn't get into the MMA, your MMA career. We hadn't really gotten into teaching
Right.
side and all these other things. So we will we'll definitely get into that. But
Sounds good to me. Yeah. Whenever you want to do it again, let me know.
oh yeah, for sure. We'll definitely do this again. So at this, since we're gonna head towards wrapping up here, I end things with what I call the lightning round. So I have a few questions for you, and then we'll kind of close out our time for tonight.
All right. Sounds good.
So this first one will probably it can go towards any of the arts that you do, but since this is a Kempo focused show, we'll probably want to think of it in this in that style, but any style that you train. But do you have a favorite technique?
I would say that my favorite technique is probably deep guard or half guard, rather. One of those two. That's something that I really enjoy. Eddie Bravo kind of came up with the technique, or he's called, half guard and deep guard. And so that's something that I really enjoy doing. So, I'll have the person up on me like this. I don't know why it's one of my favorite things, but, I'll have them, they're smashed up against my face like this, like whatever, that's fine. But I've got them, and it's just such an easy sweep. And I like to do that. And at the same time, there's, sometimes there's competitions where they end up having, injuries to their knee because of the way that I'm holding it, and it spreads out their knee and like pops it. And I can like feel it pop whenever as soon as it hits, they tap on that and they're like, got to go to the hospital or something to get checked out. So that's one of my favorite moves to do. And because that knee lock is pretty nasty. And lockdown also is a really good one. That's a lot of fun for me to work with. So those are kind of my favorite three, I guess, since you asked favorite one, but those are my favorite three.
That's fine. That's fine. That's good answers. I like that.
All right. There is another one that I really enjoy too, that whenever I'm on my side, if I'm, inside, and I've got them locked down there, and then if they start going for the Kimura, I already know, how to defend against that. But I will typically kind of like reach over from that position and reach my leg up and around them and get the lock on them from there, and then push it up against their head. And so that move's a lot of fun too, because they can't think about how to defend the Kimura whenever I've also got their leg. And so it's like they're just, overwhelmed, I guess. And so that's something that I do as well. So those are kind of my favorite moves, I would say. That's one of my go-tos anyways.
I like it.
So, yeah.
I like it. Great answer. So since you do Kempo and Taekwondo, do you have a favorite form and or set?
Now, which one? You said Taekwondo?
Taekwondo
And
or
Kempo?
Kempo?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so really for me, I haven't learned a whole lot of Taekwondo and Kempo, but from my coach, I've learned some via the MMA class where, there's certain, the roundhouse kick to the back, that's one that I really enjoy doing. And so that's probably my favorite move that I use in MMA instead of working on that. And then I will also do with like Muay Thai. I do that a lot with Muay Thai. And that's, kind of my striking art that I work with more than anything else. So one of the things that you learn there is to make sure your hands are up close to your head and make sure you're ready to protect yourself when you're getting hit. And so whenever people drop their hands like this, it seems like counterintuitive, but if you have your hands up closer to your face, ready to protect yourself, ready to protect your head, that's super important. And so that's something that I really have felt like that's really important for me to know. And that's something I learned from Muay Thai, is just to keep bobbing and weaving and move. So that's something I learned from Mike Tyson also. You watch his fights where he's on defense. He keeps those hands right up next to his face, and he's ready to jab and hook and move wherever he needs to move. So that's something that I learned from him, just kind of watching him, is he's very defensive. So that's one of the things that I enjoy about Muay Thai also is the defense aspect. So some people will ask and say, okay, you fine with me hitting in the face? And it's like, well, yeah, that's fine. But it's something that, I just kind of try to follow my partner and what they're working on, and I'm good with it. But that's something that I've worked on quite a bit, is my defense, to make sure that, with MMA, the martial arts fights that I've been in for MMA have been, obviously I've been, it's really important for me to defend myself. So, and then wrestling also is something that, I've learned how to keep myself protected in those aspects as well. And in Jiu Jitsu and in Judo, those areas are really important. So I'm a blue and dark blue stripe in Muay Thai. And then the next level up is a black stripe. And that's their system of, I don't know if you know a lot about Muay Thai.
Yeah, no, I do Muay Thai as well. So.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Got a couple more questions for you.
You gotta be careful not to hurt your back doing that one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, my back lets me know where it is plenty of times. So.
For sure. Yeah. Sometimes, those kicks and punches to the side, they're pretty tough. You got to be ready to, push in and get out of the way if necessary. It's like, man, as soon as you bring those arms up there, you're going to get kicked right there. So it's not great.
Exactly. All right. Next question there. If there is anyone that you could train with, living or dead, fictional or non-fictional, who would that be?
There's so many famous martial artists in UFC, and oh man, that's tough. And watching TV and stuff like that, I have to think through all this.
We can give a two for this part, and then when we do our next episode, we can get the rest of them.
Okay. All right, that's fair enough.
Just pick two. No particular order.
All right, so the two I would say were Fedor, the famous Russian fighter.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
So
one.
man, I feel like he would be a rough one to work with. But he's silent and deadly. You know what I mean? So it's like that's something that I think I like his attitude. I think he would be. Yeah, he's very serious. He seems. And so I feel like he would be, a real fun one to fight because he just gets out there and gives in his all. I think, man, he's tough. Second, there's so many. It's hard to pick. I guess just we'll just stick with the one for now.
Okay.
Or I can give you a jiu-jitsu BJJ competitor, because Ryan Gordon, he would be a good one. He is so smart. He's got so many techniques, and he's just a pro, man. I mean, he's fantastic. I would love rolling with him. I mean, he doesn't really have an attitude. He's just, he just gets out there and plays and has fun. And I mean, his technique is just fabulous. I think that's something that I would enjoy rolling with him for sure. I mean, it would be exhausting. It would be tough, but I think it would be a good roll for sure. He's pretty tough. So I think either one of those guys would be fun to grapple with or fight against,
Very nice, very nice. I like it. So now we are at our final piece of business for tonight.
All right.
It is time for shameless self-promotion. So if there's anything that you want to plug or anything that you want to get out there that we didn't cover tonight, now is your time to put that out there, and then we will close out for our time tonight.
Well, I mean, I would tell people to check out some ASL and BJJ classes. Doesn't matter how old or young you are. ASL BJJ programs are fantastic, and I think that there would be a lot of great people to get into it. I think it would be really beneficial for people to get into it. So I invite everybody. And that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's at my gym over in Keller. Pull it up.
And I will put links to everything in the show notes.
So the name of the school that I am teaching at is Ivalako Thai Keller MMA School. And so I would recommend people come check it out.
Excellent. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. I'm really excited to get to share your story with the world, and yeah, we're definitely going to have to do this again, because there's so many things that we need to get into.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I mean, can I share something funny with you before we close out?
Please.
A typical deaf thing is for deaf people to, go on, and hearing people are like not used to it. And so, it's already dark outside, so we're sitting here talking. That is a very deaf typical thing to have happen, is just that you're talking and it's like, then you look at the clock and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe what time it is. So just fair warning, this does happen. So deaf people typically are long-winded, shall we say.
I like it. Well, thank you again, and we'll keep in touch, and I will let you know when this is ready to be shared out, and we will go from there. But thank you again.
Sounds great. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you so much.